Holidays are supposed to be the safest days of the year. Families gather around dinner tables. Children wait for Santa. Shoppers hunt for gifts. Fireworks explode over cities as millions of people count down to midnight. But sometimes, the celebration becomes the setting for something unimaginable. A shopping crowd turns into a deadly wave. A Thanksgiving dinner ends in murder. A New Year's party fills with an invisible gas. A Christmas parade becomes a crime scene. These are some of the darkest holiday tragedies ever recorded. And several of them began with something completely ordinary: a sale, a family dinner, a parking space, or a celebration that was supposed to last only one night. We begin with Black Friday. In November 2008, thousands of shoppers gathered outside a Walmart in Valley Stream, New York. They had been waiting through the night. Inside were limited doorbuster deals. And as opening time approached, the crowd became increasingly impatient. Employees could see the glass entrance bending under the pressure. Then the doors failed. The crowd exploded forward. A temporary worker positioned near the entrance was knocked down almost instantly. People continued pouring into the store. Some tried to stop. Others simply could not, because the mass of people behind them kept pushing forward. Emergency workers struggled to reach the fallen employee. He did not survive. Perhaps the most disturbing part came afterward. When authorities tried to close the store, some customers reportedly complained because they had waited all night and still wanted to shop. The incident became one of the defining symbols of Black Friday chaos. But only hours later, another store became the scene of violence. At a Toys R Us in California, two women began arguing inside the crowded store. Then men connected to both women became involved. The confrontation escalated. Both men produced guns. Families who had come to buy Christmas presents suddenly found themselves running for cover. When the shooting ended, both armed men were dead. Investigators later concluded that the dispute was probably personal, rather than a fight over merchandise. But the setting made the story unforgettable. A gunfight had erupted inside a toy store on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. 3 years later, another Black Friday story caused outrage for a very different reason. At a Target store in West Virginia, a 61-year-old man collapsed while shopping. He appeared to be suffering a heart attack. But while he lay on the floor, shoppers continued moving around him. Some witnesses said people stepped around, and even over him, while continuing toward merchandise. Eventually, an off-duty nurse stopped and began CPR. Emergency workers transported the man to a hospital, but he later died. The story spread nationwide because it seemed to represent something frightening about extreme consumer behavior. A dying person had briefly become just another obstacle between shoppers and a bargain. Black Friday also created dangers far beyond the stores. In 2012, one California family spent the night traveling between shopping locations. The father had barely slept. Early the next morning, he drove the family SUV home on Highway 101. Exhaustion finally won. He fell asleep behind the wheel. The vehicle left the road and rolled. 2 of his daughters were killed. Investigators linked the crash directly to severe sleep deprivation. A similar tragedy happened the following year in North Carolina. A 19-year-old had been shopping late into the night with friends. While driving them home around 3:30 in the morning, he fell asleep at the wheel. His car left the road and struck a large sign. He died at the scene. There were no meaningful skid marks. He had never seen the crash coming. Then came Black Friday 2016. In San Antonio, a man witnessed another man attacking a woman in a Walmart parking lot. He stepped in to help. The attacker responded with a gun. The Good Samaritan was fatally shot. His decision to intervene saved someone from being left completely alone during an assault, but it cost him his own life. That same year, gunfire erupted outside Hamilton Mall in New Jersey. 2 brothers were shot near an SUV, 1 died. Police later believed the attack may have been targeted rather than random, but once again, a shopping center preparing for Black Friday became a crime scene. In Reno, Nevada, the cause of another fatal confrontation was almost impossible to believe: a parking space. 2 groups wanted the same spot outside a Walmart. An argument began. Tempers rose. Weapons appeared. Shots were fired. A 33-year-old man was killed. 1 human life was gone because nobody involved had been willing to simply drive away. In 2018, River Chase Galleria in Alabama became the setting for one of the most controversial Black Friday incidents. Gunfire broke out inside the crowded mall. An 18-year-old man and a 12-year-old girl were wounded. Police rushed toward the chaos. An officer then encountered 21-year-old E.J. Bradford Jr., who was armed. The officer fired and killed him. Authorities later acknowledged Bradford was probably not the person who had fired the original shots. The actual suspected shooter escaped during the confusion. The case triggered protests, outrage, and difficult questions about decisions made in seconds during mass panic. Even the pandemic did not end Black Friday violence. In November 2020, two teenagers were fatally shot at Arden Fair Mall in Sacramento. Police believe the attack was targeted. But shoppers still found themselves running through the mall, wearing masks, during a year when crowds were already smaller than usual. The holiday had changed, the danger had not. Thanksgiving has produced tragedies of its own. One of the most horrifying occurred in Jupiter, Florida, in 2009. A man arrived late to a large family Thanksgiving dinner. Nothing initially seemed unusual. He ate with relatives. He talked with them. He even joined the family while they sang around the piano. Then he walked to his car. When he came back, he was carrying a rifle. He opened fire on members of his own family. 4 people were killed, including a 6-year-old child. Several others were wounded. The attacker had already prepared to disappear. He had packed clothes and withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash. For more than a month, authorities searched for him. Eventually, motel owners recognized him after seeing the case on television. He was arrested and later received multiple consecutive life sentences. Some Thanksgiving tragedies begin with violence, others begin with carelessness. In Las Vegas, in 1995, an improperly prepared turkey was linked to a serious salmonella outbreak. Multiple people became sick after the meal. One person developed an overwhelming infection and died. The case became another reminder that holiday food can become dangerous when meat is handled, stored, or cooked incorrectly. Then there are cases that sound almost too absurd to be real. In Maryland in 2012, a Thanksgiving argument between half-siblings escalated over criticism of the meal. During the fight, a serving fork was used as a weapon. The victim suffered puncture wounds to the neck. He survived, but the attacker was arrested. A family dinner had nearly turned into a homicide over a dispute that should have ended with a few angry words. In Virginia in 2017, Thanksgiving ended far worse. A church youth pastor had been drinking heavily while tensions with family members had been increasing for weeks. On Thanksgiving Day, that tension finally broke. 3 people inside the household were shot and killed. The man responsible was later convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to life in prison. In Ohio in 2023, 5 people died when a Thanksgiving gathering was destroyed by a mobile home fire. Investigators focused on a kerosene heater as the likely source. By the time firefighters arrived, multiple structures were burning. 1 person survived, 5 others did not. And in Minnesota, Thanksgiving 2012 became the date of one of America's most debated home defense cases. A homeowner who had experienced previous burglaries made his house appear empty. Then he waited in the basement with a loaded gun. 2 teenagers entered the property. Both were shot and killed. The homeowner argued that he had been defending himself and his home. Prosecutors argued that his actions went far beyond self-defense. An audio recording became crucial evidence. A jury eventually convicted him of premeditated murder. He received life in prison without parole. Then there is New Year's Eve, a holiday built around one simple idea, a new beginning. Yet history contains many cases where midnight marked an ending instead. In 1997, Michael Kennedy, a member of the famous Kennedy family, was skiing in Aspen. He and relatives were playing a dangerous family game involving tossing a football while skiing downhill. Kennedy was moving quickly when he lost control and struck a tree. He died from his injuries. A playful tradition had become fatal in seconds. In Honolulu on New Year's Eve 2024, a backyard fireworks celebration turned catastrophic. A large illegal fireworks device tipped over after being ignited. Instead of launching upward, fireworks shot sideways into additional pyrotechnics stored nearby. A chain reaction followed. The blast killed several people and seriously injured many more. What was intended to create a spectacular celebration became a massive explosion. Decades earlier, New Year's Eve had taken the life of musician Ricky Nelson. In 1985, Nelson was flying to a concert in a chartered DC-3 when a fire broke out inside the aircraft. The pilots managed to bring the plane down in Texas. They survived, but Nelson, his fiancée, and members of his band did not escape the burning passenger cabin. Early rumors blamed drugs. The official investigation instead pointed to a malfunctioning cabin heater. Another music legend died during a New Year's journey. Hank Williams was only 29 when he traveled through the night toward a scheduled performance. He had severe health problems, chronic pain, alcohol in his system, and several powerful medications. He fell asleep in the back of a Cadillac. Hours later, his driver realized he was no longer responding. Williams had died during the trip. His death helped turn him from a country star into a permanent American legend. One of the most haunting New Year's tragedies happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2020. 8 young friends gathered in a mountain cabin to celebrate. To produce heat and electricity, they used a gasoline-powered generator inside the building. The cabin had poor ventilation. Carbon monoxide slowly accumulated. The gas had no color and no smell. By the time anyone understood something was wrong, it was too late. All 8 friends died. Their families found them the following day. Another famous New Year's Eve death involved baseball star Roberto Clemente. In 1972, Clemente was organizing humanitarian aid for earthquake victims in Nicaragua. He learned that some earlier shipments had not reached the people who needed them, so he decided to accompany the next delivery personally. The cargo plane was overloaded and had mechanical problems. Shortly after takeoff from Puerto Rico, it crashed into the ocean. Everyone aboard died. Clemente's body was never recovered. He died trying to make sure aid reached strangers. That fact became an inseparable part of his legacy. Christmas has its own dark history. In 2021, families gathered in Waukesha, Wisconsin, for the city's annual Christmas parade. Marching bands performed. Children watched from sidewalks. The Milwaukee dancing grannies moved along the route. Then an SUV broke through barriers and drove into the parade. 6 people were killed. More than 60 were injured. A community celebration transformed into mass tragedy in moments. A year later, the Raleigh Christmas parade ended after a pickup truck towing a float lost control near a group of young dancers. An 11-year-old girl was struck and later died. The case led to renewed attention on vehicle inspections and parade safety. Similar accidents had already happened elsewhere. In Bluffton, South Carolina, a 5-year-old boy fell from a Christmas parade float in 2019 and was run over. That same month, in Tennessee, a 7-year-old boy fell from a trailer being driven by his own father. The father did not initially realize what had happened. The boy was struck by the trailer and later died. The family had entered the parade expecting a happy Christmas memory. Instead, they left with a tragedy almost impossible to imagine. Christmas shopping has also become the setting for deadly violence. On Christmas Eve 2023, a confrontation inside Citadel Mall in Colorado Springs escalated into gunfire. 1 person died and others were wounded while last-minute shoppers fled through the building. More than 50 years earlier, another Christmas shopping tradition had turned deadly in Cleveland. 2 men began arguing while families waited in line to see Santa at Higbee's department store. 1 man pulled a knife. The other was fatally stabbed. Children waiting to meet Santa witnessed the aftermath. But perhaps the darkest Christmas case happened in Covina, California, on Christmas Eve 2008. A large family had gathered inside a home. Late that night, the doorbell rang. An 8-year-old girl opened the door. A man wearing a Santa Claus costume stood outside. He was not there to deliver gifts. He was the former husband of one of the people at the party. He opened fire after entering the house. He had also prepared an incendiary device and set the home ablaze. 9 people died. The attacker later took his own life. Investigators concluded that the assault had been carefully planned following a bitter divorce. The Santa costume made the crime especially disturbing. A symbol designed to represent childhood happiness had been turned into a disguise for murder. And that may be the most unsettling thing about all these stories. The holidays themselves were not the cause. What made these cases unforgettable was the contrast. A toy store and gunfire, a Thanksgiving table and murder, a New Year's countdown and carbon monoxide. a Christmas parade, and a speeding vehicle. Ordinary traditions became the backgrounds for extraordinary disasters. They also reveal something important. Crowds can become dangerous faster than people expect. Exhaustion can be as deadly as alcohol behind the wheel. Generators and heaters can kill silently. Arguments that seem trivial can escalate beyond control. And familiar places can create a false sense of safety. A holiday does not protect anyone from bad decisions, mechanical failures, violence, or simple human error. Sometimes the days we expect to remember for happiness are remembered for exactly the opposite reason. And that is why these stories remain so powerful, because every one of them began on a day when people expected nothing more than shopping, dinner, family, music, presents, or fireworks. Then everything changed.